Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the NEHA Business and Industries Affiliates Fall Webinar, The Power of Partnerships, Strengthening Agency and Industry Relationships. We are pleased to present today's program and appreciate you joining us. We are NEHA's newest affiliate, and one of our target areas is professional development. Our aim is to share timely topics of value to environmental health practitioners employed in both public and private sectors. My name is Alicia Collins. I'm a Food Safety Manager with Steritech and this year's BIA President. I will facilitate today's webinar. We've invited a panel of 3 experts to shed light on the power of partnerships by sharing their experiences and recent accomplishments as a result of building trusting relationships with government agencies and other key stakeholders. Before we begin, allow me to review some housekeeping rules for our webinar. Next slide. Make a connection and introduce yourself to the group by typing your name and organization into the chat box. We will be taking questions following our final presentation. Type your questions into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. Questions can be upvoted. You may also choose to comment on questions. Please note this is different from the chat box. This session is being recorded. The final recording will be uploaded onto neha.org 1 week from today. This webinar is eligible for 1 continuing education credit for the REHS RS credential. To request credit, go to your My NEHA account and submit the name and date of the webinar. We will share links to the resources mentioned via. At the conclusion of the webinar, we will provide a link to an evaluation. Please complete the brief survey to provide your feedback, as it is extremely important to us. Next slide. At this time, I will introduce each presenter. Our first presenter is Courtney Holbrook. Courtney is the Senior Manager of Food Safety for TopGolf, a global sports and entertainment venue with nearly 60 locations in 27 states and internationally. Courtney has a master's degree in environmental science and a registered environmental health specialist with 25 years of experience in manufacturing and restaurant food safety. Courtney will present on the proactive approach TopGolf takes to partner with local health authorities during development and construction of new venues. She will also describe ongoing regulatory relationship building efforts, which aids in time of crisis. Next is Brian Keller. Brian recently accepted a new position as a business development and food safety specialist with ABC Home and Commercial Services in Lewisville, Texas. Prior to this new role, Brian worked as an environmental health specialist for Cass County Health Department in Missouri. He's a past president of the Missouri Environmental Health Association, a member of NEHA, and is currently serving as the vice president of NEHA's Business and Industry Affiliate. Brian will share the collaboration of 6 local public health authorities in Missouri as they came to an agreement on reciprocity for food handler cards. Our final presenter is Becky Elias. Becky is the Director of Global Retail Food Safety for Starbucks and has over 15 years of experience working in food systems. Prior to joining Starbucks, Becky led food safety for Seattle and King County Public Health, where she launched a new food safety rating program and a method to disclose outbreaks in real time. She also worked for the Washington State Department of Agriculture, helping to develop farm-to-school supply chains. Becky will present on the partnership Starbucks has fostered with Feeding America and the Food Donation Connection to develop a Starbucks food donation program throughout the U.S. This brings us to our first presenter. I'll turn it over to Courtney. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Alicia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the NEHA BIA for the invitation to present at today's webinar. As Alicia said, I'm Courtney Holbrook, Senior Manager of Food Safety for TopGolf, and I'm a strong believer in partnerships between industry and regulatory. I know they're very important to food safety, so I'm very happy to be able to share with everyone a little bit about what we do at TopGolf in this area as it relates to our new locations and to crisis situations, and then I'll switch gears a little bit to discuss some other networking opportunities for industry and regulatory agency folks. But before I go straight into how we partner with regulatory, I thought I would tell everybody a little bit about TopGolf in case some of you may not know much about our brand. So slide, please. TopGolf is a multi-level entertainment venue featuring high-tech gaming with golf. We have climate-controlled hitting bays on what we call the T-line, And this is where players hit golf balls out into the outfield where there are targets in the ground to catch the balls. Each person's ball is tracked with a microchip so that you can see where your ball lands and how many points you score. And it's great fun for families, groups of friends, coworkers, first dates, you name it. It's just a lot of fun, and you don't need to be a golfer to enjoy TopGolf. Anybody can play and have a good time. And I have to say, this is some of the images here of our venues, but if you're ever in Las Vegas, I encourage you to go to our venue there. It's over the top. It is 4 stories of T-line, and we actually have 2 swimming pools on site with cabanas. So you can rent a cabana at the pool and a hitting bay all in one place. It's really something to see. And let me tell you, when I never thought that that information I had to learn about swimming pools for my REHS would come in handy, but now it's all coming together full circle for me at TopGolf. And all of our venues also have large event spaces where we host many corporate and social events. Large groups reserve those spaces with hitting bays for corporate parties, corporate events, weddings. We do gender reveals, class reunions, charity fundraisers, all kinds of stuff. And some of the venues have live music, spaces, game rooms, and other entertainment. Slide, please. We entertain more than 20 million guests annually at more than 50 locations in 29 states across the U.S. And we also have 4 international locations open in the UK and in Australia, with more coming in Mexico and in the United Arab Emirates. So to support all of that, all those festivities, we have about 65,000 square feet of space in our venues. And we have multiple kitchens, bars, beverage stations, a scratch-made, chef-driven menu, and handcrafted cocktails. And we offer breakfast, lunch, brunch, dinner, and a special event menu for those big parties, and can entertain parties large and small. So this is just a couple of shots of some of the food items that we serve. Slide, please. Our venues sit on approximately 15 acres of land, and they take about a year to construct. And over the years, as we've continued to grow, we're close to 60 venues now. We have found that we're often the first of our kind in many of the locations where we open, particularly in terms of our size and the entertainment that we offer, multiple floors, multiple outdoor spaces, the number of kitchens that we have, vet stations, everything, all rolled in. There's just a lot going on. And because of the size and the magnitude of our projects, the permit application, the plan review, and the inspection process can be quite an undertaking. So what we've done is we've begun to spend extra time in the construction phase to meet with the health department. And our design and build firm will schedule this meeting as a sit-down meeting with the health department about 2 months prior to substantial completion of our project. And the meeting will be attended by myself as the food safety manager, along with our TopGolf construction project manager and the project manager from our design and construction firm. At the meeting, we will review a pre-opening checklist, and that is often provided by the health department directly. And it generally lists all of the items that are going to be inspected at our initial inspection, so that we can get approval to start bringing in equipment and supplies and begin stocking smallwares and food so that we can start training. In addition to discussing the permitting inspection items, things like required water temperatures, where thermometers will be placed, finish out requirements and things like that, we also review additional policy and procedure requirements that either the health department has or that we have as brand standards. And this includes the items that are listed on the slide here, things like food protection manager certification, food handler cards, any other special requirements that the health department might have. And we will also provide and review our TopGolf HACCP plan. We'll review a copy of our menu. We'll show them the consumer advisory and the nutritional labeling that we use on the menu. And in many cases, the health department does not ask for these things up front, but I will usually make a point to mention and show them our associate health policy, our vomit and diarrheal cleanup SOP, and I bring copies of all of these things to leave behind if they would like to add them to our file. And I always offer, of course, to email electronic copies if that's what they prefer. So the review of the checklist, along with just a general conversation about our basic food safety SOPs and our internal food safety training, it tends to generate a good discussion, and it helps us to establish a rapport with the inspector. The construction team often has questions as well that they can pose at that time related to things like equipment installation, the timing of inspections from other departments in the city, and we generally just make sure that everybody's on the same page as to how the inspection and approval process will work. And before we started having these sit-down meetings, I would say the openings went pretty well, but on a few occasions there were some delays in the process where the health department may have had a specific question about a food handling procedure or a process, and the construction firm didn't understand exactly what was being asked, and maybe emails, were circling around within TopGolf from department to department until they would find their way to me. Or in some cases, we've run into some other delays around the menu copy. If our menu copy did not meet requirements with regard to the consumer advisory, having to reprint can be costly and creates time delays. And I'd say after one of our first meetings with the health department, we had a really good conversation, myself and the inspector that was there that day, talking about reportable illnesses and restricting ill workers, and we covered all different kinds of subjects. And after the meeting, as we walked out to the parking lot, our construction project manager said something to me like, Courtney, I have no idea what you were talking about, but y'all were definitely speaking the same language, and it was awesome. So we've really found that these are helpful to everybody involved. Slide, please. So when we get to the on-site inspection with the health department, we're now finding that most, if not all, of the questions have been answered. I try to be at the venues for these on-site inspections, along with our director of operations who's going to be working at that location, our executive chef, and the construction project managers, and that's who's shown here with me in the photo. At this point, the inspector sees familiar faces, they see the involvement of the corporate food safety manager again, and they have a sense of what to expect when they see our venue for the first time. And having the director of ops and the chef there too really helps those venue managers get off on the right foot with their inspector after we open. Slide, please. A newer part of our efforts around partnering with regulatory agencies is what I'm going to refer to as proactive pre-crisis information sharing, and that is a mouthful, but as you all know, when a crisis occurs that can impact food safety, it's often difficult or impossible to reach anyone at the health department because they're also quite busy dealing with that same crisis. And because of this, we know some health departments require a pre-approval of any action plan in order for you to stay open and operating during the crisis event. So this is quite new for us at TopGolf, but what I'm working on now is using the same contacts that I'm building through those pre-open meetings, and I'm following up with health departments after we open to share copies of our action plans for things like boil water alerts, power outages, floods, hurricanes, etc. And this is all done through email rather than a face-to-face meeting. And like I said, it's new for us, partly because I've only been with the company for a couple of years and we're just getting this off the ground. And a lot of these plans that you see on the screen have recently been formalized internally here. So we really have it more buttoned up and can share it. And although I haven't received any written pre-approvals yet from health departments that we're working with, we're going to continue to work toward it, and I'm getting some good feedback on our plans. And I did want to say that although I'm coming at this from the perspective of a person working on the industry side of things, I hope that what I've shared around this is helpful too for anyone on the webinar today that's working in regulatory, because really reaching out to arrange these meetings, whether the invite comes from the industry side or from the regulatory side, can really help to establish a great partnership between the groups, particularly if it's a new company that's coming to your city or your county for the first time. And I really believe that this will ultimately improve food safety. Slide, please. So switching gears now, I thought I would just briefly mention the numerous opportunities to network and collaborate with our peers in food safety, including regulatory, industry, and others. Many of you are already familiar with the organizations that you see on the screen here, and they're all great resources for information and opportunities to collaborate. But in particular, I wanted to highlight CFP, the Conference for Food Protection. Slide, please. The Conference for Food Protection meets every 2 years to focus on retail food issues and programs, and it seeks to find solutions through collaboration of regulatory, industry, academia, and consumer groups. The goal of the conference is to address the issues and propose regulations or changes to existing regulations, particularly the FDA Model Food Code. And those are changes that will be accepted by regulators and industry. Slide, please. This slide shows you how CFP is organized, and I am far from a CFP expert, so I'm going to do my best to explain how it all works. The Executive Board provides administrative management of the conference, and it includes 15 regulatory members, and those regulatory members are a mix of federal, state, and local agencies, and there's also 6 members of industry on the board, along with 1 person from academia and 1 from consumer groups. Then there are 3 councils within the conference. Each are dedicated to issues in specific subject areas, and those are shown on the screen just listed underneath the council name. And each council is also made up of a particular balance of industry, regulatory, academia, and consumer groups. And each council may have 1 or more committees assigned to it, where the committee members do much of the work of the conference between the biennial conference meetings. And participating on those committees and councils allows you to work side by side with a variety of stakeholders, all with a common purpose to improve food safety. At the conference itself, all of the issues are reviewed by their respective councils and are voted on. And those issues that pass through the council voting process are then reviewed and voted on by the state delegates. Essentially, the items that pass through this voting process are suggested additions to the FDA Model Food Code or suggested changes to existing food code language, and these are presented to FDA. And due to the robust review and the science-based decision-making that takes place at CFP, the FDA gives great consideration to the outcomes of the conference in determining what changes are made to the food code. So if you want to work with your peers in industry and regulatory to influence the changes that are made to the FDA Model Food Code, then the best way to do this is to become a member of the Conference for Food Protection and attend a biennial conference. The first time I attended CFP, it was many years ago, but I had absolutely no idea what was going on. The process was very foreign to me, and it took a little time to understand how it all worked together. But over the years, I've been on several committees now, and I've participated on Council 2 for several biennial meetings. And really and truly, getting involved has just been the best way to learn how CFP works, and it's helped me to make lasting connections with my peers, both in industry and regulatory, and to really feel as though I've made an impact on improving food safety in our country through that work. So I encourage you to check out the CFP website for more information. That's here on the screen. And the next conference is going to be in 2020 in Denver, Colorado, and it starts on March 30th. So I hope to see you there. And if anyone on the call makes the decision to attend CFP after today, come and find me, look me up, and let's connect at the conference. That's really all I've got prepared for you guys today. So I appreciate your time today, and I will hand it over to Brian Keller.
Thank you, Courtney. Just wanted to thank everybody, Alicia, the members of the NEHA, BIA, my colleagues from Missouri, that I see a couple of you, and also my new employers. It's been 1 month exactly today that I began working for ABC Home and Commercial Services out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'd like to thank my employer, Dennis Jenkins, who has been very supportive for allowing me to actually be a part of this webinar. I actually signed up to do this before I was hired, but I looked at them, they were very supportive and wanted to always be a part of having a good working relationship with the regulatory partners. Just real briefly, ABC Home and Commercial Services is the largest privately owned pest control company in the state of Texas. There are three big branches, one here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that also services Oklahoma, Houston, and the Austin area. But again, I would just like to thank all of them for their support. And as I started in a new facet of my career. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to give you a little background, I did work for the Cass County Health Department. It was part of the Kansas City metro area. Okay, for this sake, you can see on the slide the counties that are in blue. That is Kansas. Kansas is a completely different entity than Missouri. Kansas operates all of its food regulatory is under the Department of Agriculture, and then you also see Ray County, which is the extended part of the Kansas City metro area. Okay, so with them is they operate under the Missouri Food Code as opposed to having their own food code. So they're part of the metro area, but they were not part of this agreement with having a mutual reciprocity for food handlers. What that is, it's Platte, Clay counties, Jackson County, Cass County, the city of Kansas City, and in the city of Independence. We all actually have our own food ordinances. Okay, so with the state of Missouri, is they do have their own ordinance. It is the Missouri Food Code. But any county or municipality can have a food code as long as they are co-equal to or more current and stringent than the actual state level. Okay, so, and with that is then each municipality can set some of its own requirements, such as food handler training, because that is one thing the state of Missouri does not actually have a requirement for food handler training. Next slide, please. So one of the issues that we ran into over time is that one of the issues is that you have a large level of consistency, but some inconsistencies. Again, you have 6 different jurisdictions all operating under different versions of the food code. And that was one of those things that we recognized as business is in regulatory, is that we're all dealing with the same complaints. People are like, well, it's always so different when you go from one jurisdiction to another. Okay, and then also when you have people who operate businesses over multiple jurisdictions, such as Quick Trip, and we have some McDonald's franchises where they have employees that are going from Cass County, working in Cass County 1 day or 2 days a week, and then they go into Jackson County, or they work in over in the city of Kansas City, and they might have had certification in my county when I worked for Cass County, but if they went into Jackson County or Kansas City, their certification was not recognized, even though it was largely the same thing. And so that was really a complaint that all of us were fielding. And so as we're dealing with that, it's like, how do we address this issue as regulatory agencies without compromising our own agency? Next slide, please. Okay, so here's some things to look at. So one of the things is that we've actually met, we kind of meet as a regional environmental partner. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. As you see, like all of our different food handler cards, there's different formattings. Some of the things that we ran into was having discussions of going, hey, let's have a regional card. That was something we talked about. And we meet at a place called the Mid-America Regional Council, which is a group that facilitates meetings for different agencies to help, basically just provides that platform where we can talk about different things that affect all of us and making sure we're all not recreating the wheel and working over top of each other, or that if there's issues that affect one county and affect others, we're all addressing them in a similar way. So we did that. So we actually looked at having a uniform card. Well, part of the problems is formatting differences. Health departments that are under NEHA have to have that little shield logo on there. Well, a place like Jackson County Environmental Health, they were actually under Public Works for the longest time. They're not a health department, so they could not have that NEHA logo. Kansas City has the fountain. That was something that had to be on their card. And so that was like the types of things that we looked at, and we're like, we'd like to have a regional card, but it's not going to work because we have so many different things that could not be on there, much less the issue of who's going to print the cards, who's going to be the issuer. If we have one card, is only one agency going to do all the issuing, and then as people are getting a card issued, let's say if they come from like southern Cass County going into the city of Kansas City, that's an hour-long trip to get a food handler card versus having one that's issued in their own county. Next slide, please. So like I said, we used the Mid-America Regional Council as our format for doing a lot of finding that common ground. And a lot of that was just talking about what do we teach in our classes? Do we have we each have seated courses. Okay, we agree on that. What are the things we do agree on? Okay, we're going to agree on, the certain core types of criteria for a basic food handler class. We're going to make it only an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours. We're trying to keep it very much a straightforward, fundamental thing. And then making sure that we had representatives from each, from each jurisdiction would sit in the other jurisdictions' seated classes in order to just make sure we're teaching roughly the same types of things. And then also as an offering is that we all had to agree on having an online course offering, which you see all those are the ones that we've all agreed on and at some point or another. Okay, so so those were the types of things that we worked on. And this was not a quick, easy process. This all started back in the beginning of 2012 when I actually started working full-time in the health department. So this was not a quick, well, we're good, we're all going to do this. It took quite a bit of actual working to get to this point. And again, it was the win-win was that we're going to have some uniformity in our own health departments in a region, but we're also helping to address a concern that comes from a lot of our business partners. Like I said, you get people from Quick Trip, somebody who works as a full-time roving employee, and you'd go to do an inspection and they'd pull out food handler cards that looked like a pinochle duck when they would just show you every card that they've ever had for every type of thing. And so we really wanted to make sure we were getting to that point where we're slimming it down for them as much as it was working for us. So next slide, please. So ultimately, what happened was they just decided that we can't do a regional card because, again, we have the formatting issues. We have 4 jurisdictions that all had badging programs, so they would, insisted on having a hard plastic card with a photo ID on it. Then you had a couple of the agencies that issued paper cards, okay, and they weren't going to go out and buy badging programs, or those were just not realistic things that were going to happen, okay. And so then ultimately they decided, all right, we're going to teach 95% of the same material. The little 5% difference was particular to that said jurisdiction. Okay, and the duration of time that everybody was going to offer, a seated class and have an online course offering, and that ultimately it was like if a food handler card was valid in Cass County, it was equally going to be valid and recognized in Platte County, Clay County, wherever. A lot of similarity, but there's a lot of difference. And the way how I describe it to people is the difference between like National League Baseball and American League. The rules are 95% the same. What's done, it was 95% about the same, but it's that 5% of difference that made all the difference in the world. And it's a little 5% of difference is what really bothered and was the type of things that hampered a lot of our business partners. But again, in our region, we're trying to maintain our identities as health departments, but do something that was actually proactive and beneficial to our business partners. Okay, so with that is next slide, please. I do appreciate everybody's help, and when I agreed to do this, is I talked to all my people that I did work with, my counterparts. And if you do have any questions, I highly encourage you to contact any one of those folks. They are the actual administrators or the managers of those environmental health programs. If you do have any questions, if you have any other questions, you can contact me at abcpest or use my Gmail account. I do appreciate that. With that, I would like to introduce Becky Elias from Starbucks, and thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Great. Brian and Courtney, thank you both so much, and thank you to the entire NEHA BIA and community that's participating today. We really appreciate the opportunity to share about this partnership and just to have this open dialogue about partnerships in general. So thank you so much. As Brian mentioned, my name's Becky Elias. I lead our global retail food safety program for Starbucks. And we'll be sharing a bit today about our food share program, which is a food donation program. And before I do that, similar to Courtney, I just want to share a little bit about Starbucks, our company, our mission and values, and our scale and scope, so you have some sense of this project. So the mission and values of the company are really core and central to who we are. Foundationally, our aim is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. And like I said, this is really central to how we operate. It helps inform the types of decisions that we embark on as a company, our strategic direction, and it also really informs how it is we go about our work with each other and through the external partners that we're working with. So I just wanted to mention that at the beginning and also give you a sense of the scale of our operation. So currently Starbucks is operating in just over 80 countries across the globe. We have over 31,000 stores within our portfolio. And the project I'll be speaking about is one that's specific to the United States within our company operated stores. So it's referring to a smaller subset of that portfolio, but still really helps to capture what it means to try and execute a change at scale and to do so in a way with various partners. And so with that, you can go to the next slide. So the topic that we're talking about is our food share program and food donation in particular. And I think this is an issue that probably resonates with many of you, certainly with income inequality that we see across the United States and the globe, and also what we see with hunger. We know that this is really a critical issue in all of our communities. More than 37 million Americans are struggling with hunger. Children in particular, we know that 1 in 7 might not know where their next meal is coming from. And so for a food business of our scale and of our ubiquity, it's imperative that we think about what happens with the full life cycle of all of our food and where does that food go. And the opportunity that we saw, this speaks to our partnership as well, we refer to all of our baristas and employees across the business as partners. And we were hearing loud and clear from partners all throughout the company that they saw opportunity to donate our surplus food. And they wanted to know what were we as a business doing about that. As I mentioned, with the scale of the business, it's also really complex and complicated to come up with solutions and with things that are this logistically tedious to make sure that we're able to execute on something that is safe and maintains quality and dignity and respect for all people who would be receiving our food. And so what I'll be breaking down a little bit is the strategic partnership that we embarked on with Feeding America, and then we also connected with the Food Donation Connection, as well as numerous health agencies across the United States, to create a goal of rescuing 100% of the food that we have available to donate within our stores. And we set a milestone target of 50 million meals donated by the year 2020. I'm pleased to say that through these partnerships, we have already surpassed this target milestone, but we're still on the journey to expand this program across our entire portfolio. So far, we have been able to reach just under 5,000 of our stores where they're able to execute on this program, with over 91,000 of our store partners involved in this process of helping us to donate food. It's not our, as I mentioned, it's not our whole portfolio, but we're just over 50% of that company operated store portfolio, and we're excited for the progress that we're making. We are well past the target. We've already donated over 63 million meals. Certainly that's a huge amount of food waste that we've been able to divert from landfills. And then as I go on in the presentation, I'll describe a little bit about this tax benefit and how it is we've reinvested it into the program, but also what it means to share that reinvestment across our partnerships so that all of our partners feel the impact of that reinvestment to enable the sustainability of this program, not just for us, but equitably across all of the partners that we engage with so that we can all continue to do this good work. And with that, you can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So here I wanted to highlight who our key partners are, but particularly when we think about an effective partnership, we're really wanting to lean into what it is that each of our partners are experts on, and also understand what might be the very unique needs of our partners in order for the partnership to work for everybody. And so that's what I wanted to capture here. All three of these partners have the goal of being able to donate our food, but we each bring something very different to the table to be able to execute on that. So for Feeding America, some key strengths that they have is they have a very robust network of food banks and of agencies that they work with all across the United States. They also know that network quite intimately. They know what their needs are. They know the logistical barriers that each of those networks might have. And so they're able to speak to and advocate on behalf of those individual food banks or individual agencies about what their needs are, so that we as a business of the scale that we have know how to bend and flex to meet what their particular needs are. They also have a very specific knowledge expertise about the regulatory landscape as it relates to food donation. And I call that out specifically because our Starbucks food safety team also has a strong command of the variety of food code adaptations that exist across the regulatory landscape within the United States, but we're not the experts about food donation in particular. And so this was something where we were really able to lean into Feeding America to tap into that knowledge base and to know from them what best practices they've been able to employ and what partnerships they have locally so that we're meeting the regulatory needs in each of those areas. We also were able to tap into the Food Donation Connections logistics network. So they specialize in food recovery, particularly for logistics and distribution. And we were really able to partner with them as we were thinking about the need of tailoring our food distribution logistics across the network of food banks and agencies that Feeding America connected us to. And so they were a really key partner for us to actually execute on these goals that we put in place. And then for us as Starbucks, in addition to the stores that we have and the food that we have to donate, we were able to come to the table with some really strong food safety resources at hand. We were able to do full micro testing and validation studies on all of the products that we were going to donate, so that then as we went into each individual community, we had confidence about the food that we were donating. We had documentation that we could share with the health departments so that people knew that we had that backing in place. We also were able to bring support to Feeding America and to the Food Donation Connection about food safety systems and helping to develop management tools for each of their groups. So it was streamlined with the food safety management practices we have in our stores. And not to the same degree that FDC has from a food recovery logistics, but we also have quite a strong capability in our cold chain distribution. And so that was a big part of what we were able to bring to the table in areas where Starbucks was needing to be the actual delivery agent of the food to our food banks. So those were key pieces that we brought to the table. And you can go ahead to the next slide. So another piece that I wanted to share is that part of the partnership process is that sometimes you need to adapt and change as you go. And so what I am showing you here was what our initial concept was of what the distribution logistics would look like for our donation process. And you'll see this looks very simple. It's merely a 5-point process, and it seems like that would be easy. We had the vision you would start out where our Starbucks partners would prepare the food to donate in store. We had the bags in place, the stickers, all of the indicators so that they could leave the cold food in the refrigerator, the ambient food on the handoff plane and just hand it off. There would be a truck to pick it up. It would be delivered to the food bank, and then individuals could enjoy the food at the end. If you go to the next slide, though, you'll see that it didn't exactly work like this in all of our markets, and we actually needed to come up with multiple distribution models so that it worked for all of our different partnerships. And for full visibility, we shared for you the ways that we actually looked through the pros and cons of each of these delivery models and recognized that while they all have pros and cons, just because one was able to scale, it didn't mean that it scaled for everybody. And so it meant that it was worth it to us to invest in multiple models so that it worked for the various partners and that we were recognizing what their needs were. So in our current model and practice that we have some situations where Starbucks and our third-party logistic firm is the entity that is bringing the food from our stores in our own trucks and distribution partners back to the food banks and to the agencies. We have some where it's a nighttime pickup, it's 7 days a week, but it's actually Feeding America's logistics and their trucks that are able to do that pickup. And then we have others where the nighttime didn't work, the 7 day a week model didn't work because our agencies might not be open 7 days a week. And so we actually created additional models that worked for these agencies where the local agency might be the entity that's picking it up, but it's very specific to their needs. And as the continuation of kind of adapting to everyone's needs, but wanting to ensure that there was strong food safety capability built into all of our systems, the partnership included partners from our team at Starbucks and partners from Feeding America actually going out and shadowing multiple versions of these delivery models all across the United States. So we had partners on our team making these trips and doing the overnight shadow of the delivery to help validate and verify some of the food safety components that we were building in, but also to help troubleshoot and build best practices in each of these areas so that all of the partner agencies that we worked with felt confident and capable with the food safety management plan that they were putting in place in order to execute on this donation. And I'll mention while we're here too, I'll bring up the tax benefit program that I spoke to. So as a part of doing our donation, we as Starbucks receive a tax benefit for doing that. And we've made a point to reinvest all of that money into the ability for all of these agencies to continue these logistic models that work for them. So we share that tax benefit across our partners with Feeding America. They in turn also share that tax benefit with some of the individual local food banks and agencies to ensure that those individual sites have enough money to handle the logistics need on their end to be able to execute the program. And we share some of that money with the FDC to ensure that they're also able to maintain it. So from a partnership standpoint, the equity nature of it to ensure that all partners were able to continue the program and participate in it was a key value for us as we embarked on this partnership together. And with that, you can head to the next slide. And I see as I'm talking, there's a question that's come through about how we worked with the health agencies while we were building out the logistics model. And so I'll explain that too. I think in a way this map helps to describe it. So here you can see across the United States, here are some of the key areas where we have partnerships. And on the right, you can see the various local agency or food bank partners that we've been working with in those areas. So some of the work that we've done with health agencies has been being able to show the documentation that we have so that the agencies have confidence in the food that we're donating. We've done shelf life studies and validation studies on all of our food, and we've been tracking it from the moment the food was produced in one of our production facilities and the time and temperature monitoring of it throughout production, through distribution to our stores, the length of time it's in our store, the length of time it will then take to get to the donation site, and the time then that the donation site will be able to hand it off to the person who's going to be able to consume it. And we've documented to ensure that any product that we're integrating into the system has strong food safety validation associated with it. I would say that that's been a key component of the strong partnership with health agencies, is that it's expanded their confidence in the system and willingness for us to pilot this in so many locations at the scale that we're doing. And if you go to the next slide, it actually helps to speak to the evolution of that partnership. And here I really want to give a great shout out to some partners that we have here in the state of Washington, but this isn't unique to the state of Washington. Other states are engaged in this as well. Our state Department of Health and our state Department of Agriculture both are always looking at ways to expand food donation and food waste reduction across the state. And so with our State Department of Health, they've been incredibly collaborative in terms of seeking feedback from industry about how we can expand food donation across the state, both from large players such as Starbucks and from individual restaurants, or even from communities or nonprofits that are wanting to donate food. Which can be a very sensitive topic in that we all want to be able to donate food, but we want to ensure that it's a safe product that we're donating. And so as part of this, they've created a committee to seek feedback on how they can make updates to the food code to make food donation both more possible while ensuring safety. And we've really appreciated being involved in that process and have been able to draw upon the various logistic models that they have so that they're able to see multiple versions of what food donation could look like with safety being integrated into it. And as we go forward, the waste reduction part with the Washington State Department of Agriculture, they have seen the work that has been happening from a food donation standpoint to now create a working team of how they can create a task force and set goals specifically to waste reduction. And so we're really excited that this donation program has now informed how we participate with the state in a waste reduction effort. I see another question coming through, so I'll answer that one of, did we encounter any additional challenges with TCS foods versus non-TCS foods? We did end up creating two slightly different processes within our stores of our ambient food and our food that needed to be maintained at temperature. So there is an aspect where our store partners at the end of the evening gather all of the food that's ambient, and they have a process where they collect that and time mark it, or they don't time mark that, but they collect it and leave it out so the delivery driver knows where to pick it up. And then there's a different process where they gather all of the food that's requiring temperature control, are time stamping that, and then that's available for our delivery drivers. And part of the shadowing and validation that we've done on the distribution back to the food banks is inclusive of taking temperatures and monitoring it when it's picked up from the store, when it's taken to the donation site. We document it and have developed a food temp log program for our donation sites so that they're taking temp when they receive it, and they're monitoring the temperature of it all the way through till when it's received by the constituent. And we also had to make some choices with our food. If there was any food that we didn't have confidence in, that food has not been included in the donation program. So we've been specific to what foods are available. So with that, I'll wrap that up here and hand it back to Alicia so we can open it up for questions for the entire group.
Thank you, Becky and Courtney and Brian. We appreciate all of your presentations and your expertise. We do have a couple of questions that we'll go ahead and ask you to respond. I do have one for can you please provide some additional tips for pre-approvals of emergency response plans?
Sure, this is Courtney. I'm happy to offer some tips. I guess what I would say is, after having successfully used in the past other action plans when I was with other companies, I think that the biggest tip I could give anyone who's going to approach this effort would be to make sure that your action plans are comprehensive. For example, if you have a boil water alert or boil water advisory action plan in place, I think the best way that you'll achieve a pre-approval from a health department is to make sure the plan is comprehensive and covers exactly what your operation intends to do when the alert is issued, where you're going to source ice, where you're going to source beverages, and spell everything out very clearly and provide that comprehensive plan to the health department. I think the other part about it that I would recommend is that it might require some follow-up. Everybody knows how busy and in many cases understaffed some of the health departments are, so they don't necessarily have a lot of time in their day to pour over a lengthy plan. So you want it to be comprehensive, but you've got to be patient and follow up and give them an opportunity to read through that and ask questions until you know, you've answered all their questions to their satisfaction. And then at some point you may just need to specifically ask for that written pre-approval. Some health departments will still want to swing by and do an on-site inspection to double check your plan, but your goal is to be able to have enough detail in there so that you can get started with your operation in that crisis event, continue to serve the community when they need it the most, and then the health department has confidence that they can swing by and see you when they get a chance. You know, they've got other locations that they're going to be checking on as well, but you're just trying to offer up your plan as a way to alleviate some of the pressure from them during that time. And so just be comprehensive, be persistent follow-up and can just continue to partner with the department. Thanks.
Thank you, Courtney. Very helpful. We have another question for Brian. Did you have any larger industry partners request to use their own food safety training as an acceptable substitute for the health department training requirements? And before I turn it over to Brian, I should remind everyone, please enter any questions you have in the Q&A box. Thank you.
On occasion, yes, we did. Actually, probably one that really insisted on having their own training program was actually a school, which is really kind of interesting. But I mean, we have had like bigger companies say, well, we have our own training. And I can't speak for any of the other jurisdictions outside of Cass County. It was really one of those things where we really discouraged having that. I mean, they could do their own training and call for their own satisfaction, but the thing is then it was only, they couldn't go if they up and quit their job and decided to go work for the restaurant down the street. Their training would not be recognized by us, and that's where we came into, and that's also part of with the food handler agreement, is that we all as jurisdictions actually, these are the trainings that we agree upon, because it has certain criteria that we wanted to make sure that anybody in food service was going to at least have some basic knowledge, that we could vouch for it. Like I said, but you had companies that would want to do their own, and I'm sure like some of the other, I don't know, maybe some of the other jurisdictions, they would be willing to actually do the review of that training. But when I worked there, I had nearly 400 permitted food establishments, and the last thing I it was kind of selfish, but honestly, the last thing I needed to do was be bogged down reviewing individual businesses' food training programs when I had trouble getting to do inspections in general. So really, we ultimately defaulted back to our training was going to be the one that if they were going to work in our county, they had to have ours. So that way, again, if you had people who decided they were going to quit and go work somewhere else, they at least had a card that was our certification card that was actually issued by our county, and they could go anywhere they wanted to at that point. Anything else?
It's very helpful, Brian. Thank you. We do have another question for Becky. If food donation organizations wish to partner with Starbucks, should they email you directly, or is there a different procedure?
Great. Jeff, thanks for the question. First of all, we love that you're wanting to expand further organizations that we could partner with, so that would be fantastic. There's a partner on our team, and I'll provide her contact info, Alicia, to you after, so we can send it out to everybody. Becky Endine is the partner on our team who's been leading a lot of the work with food donation, and so she'll be the best conduit to be able to connect you with our donation network, and that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask each of our presenters if they have any last-minute tips or advice for our attendees, and then we will bring to a close.
This is Courtney. I would just say find a way to partner, whether it's with your local health department, where your restaurant locations are, if you're on the industry side of things, or if you're a regulatory person and you are able to attend NEHA meetings or Conference for Food Protection meetings, seek out the industry participants at those to connect and exchange contact information and build those partnerships and the connections between our industry. We're all here for the same reason. We're all working towards the same goal, and it just really helps to build your network with a balance of regulatory and industry so that you've got experts you can reach out to for questions and collaborate with on projects. So just find there's so many opportunities out there to do it. It's so helpful to our businesses on both sides and to food safety. So just encourage everybody to continue the effort.
And this is Becky. Courtney, I would completely echo that. I think that these partnerships are so valuable. The more we can expand our network and work towards shared goals, the better it is for all of us. I would maybe add to it the aspect of just being really open to what different partner needs are, because those can be so different. And so as we partner together, how do we listen to that so we're all able to work together in a way that's meaningful and works for each of the different partners? I did want to quickly follow up on, or to elaborate a little bit on the question that came up about how we partnered with health departments, because I know that question came through in a couple of places here. And one was the way we worked with Feeding America with their relationship with health departments. Another was being open about the fact, realizing that there wasn't always clarity in the food code in our local jurisdictions. And so a lot of our work was being open and saying, here's what we hope to do, here's the way we've thought through the risk, and we are trying to document that risk so that when Feeding America went to the health agencies, or when we did, we were able to have that conversation openly. And I think that's what's informed this further partnership with the State Department of Health in terms of wanting to create code language that makes it more possible for people to engage in donation. So that's been a big part of the partnership there, is being open to it in times where there's not clear code of how we go down that path together.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay.
Brian, we do have another question that came in for you specifically.
I saw that, and I appreciate the question. Okay, so the question was regarding ServSafe and state food safety certifications, and we actually do recognize those. One of the things is for like Cass counties, we went from did a drastic step up when we had to upgrade our ordinance. We went from the 1999 version of the Model Food Code to the 2013. And that's when we actually have had so before with the 99 version of the food code, is it really was basically a basic food handler training certification. And again, that is one of those things where it comes with a local health department, is you have the ability to write some of those requirements and rules that are specific for your jurisdiction. Okay, and so that's why we had our own food handler training, because it was basically to address our needs as in our own county. But when we did actually go to the 2013 version of the FDA Model Food Code, is we did open it up to where now we're requiring managers to have some level of manager level training that is, as long as it's recognized through the ANSI and Council for Food Protection, accreditation, such as state food safety, Prometrics course, ServSafe, those courses. We do actually recognize those, and that's because they are on that national level versus somebody typing in Missouri food handlers and 55 predatory websites show up, and having somebody just go, well, that one's $7 and that's the course I want to take. So really, when it came down to it, again, it's not that as an agency we're open to having people with food handler training, of all sorts. It's just we got to narrow it down, because after a point, it's so hard to sit there and find out what every single course teaches. And so that's really why we narrowed it down to, like, again, food safety was the one that everybody in the region recognized and agreed upon. That's why. And TAP series, when that was introduced by Jackson County, they had to sit there and have all of us as representatives. We all got to take the course online just to make sure that we all agreed on it and and accepted it as the course. Same thing with the other one that Premier, I believe, is what it was for the city, is we all had to take that course just so we could see, yes, this is what it teaches. But trying to follow every single online course would bog down, members of environmental staff trying to do that. So we had to narrow it down. Does that make sense? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. We're going to bring our webinar to a close. On behalf of the BIA, we extend our appreciation to you, to NEHA, and to each of our presenters for participating in today's webinar. We hope today's presentations have been informative and will assist you in your day-to-day practice and longer-term strategies in environmental health. We trust in the power and strength of partnerships across all sectors. Please visit our website at www.nehabia.org for additional information about our industry affiliate. Membership is open to all persons, businesses, and organizations working or supporting environmental health. As a reminder, please complete the survey you will receive shortly. Your feedback is extremely important to us, as our goal is to bring topics and resources that will be beneficial to you. This concludes our webinar. Enjoy your day.